Alright, let's take a look here at responding non-defensively to criticism, and then we'll take a closer look at the assessment that's associated with responding non-defensively. So when another person is criticizing you or communicating aggressive message towards you, you can respond non-defensively to that criticism to potentially help neutralize or reduce the intensity of that communication, to work to try to help improve the communication climate. There are two different categories that we can choose from here. The first one is to seek more information, and the second one is called agreeing with the critic. Let's take a look at seeking more information. We have three choices on this slide, and then there are some on the next slide. The first one is asking for specifics. If somebody communicates to you or criticizes you saying they're angry about something that you did, something that you didn't do, you have a pretty good idea of what they're upset at, but you might not know exactly why they're upset or specifically what they're upset about. So you can just simply straight out ask them exactly what they're upset about in detail. The next option is similar in a sense because you're guessing about specifics instead of asking about specifics. So when you choose this option, you offer a guess. Like let's say somebody's upset with the quality of your driving. Let's say you're driving down the street and the person in the passenger seat criticizes your driving. You can guess about specifics. They might say your driving is terrible, and you can say, are you referring to this? Are you referring to that? That's guessing about specifics. The third option we've seen before in class, we've practiced paraphrasing before. When you paraphrase the speaker's ideas, you're basically helping that person to either get something off their chest. They're criticizing you, they're angry, and you paraphrase back to them in your own words what you think they're saying. You're helping them get something off their chest, and or you're communicating to the person criticizing you that you are giving them your undivided attention and listening very attentively, that you care about what they have to say and you're listening very closely. Okay, on this slide, the first item shown here is asking what the critic wants. So the other person has criticized you about something that you did, about something that you didn't do, whatever, about your behavior. You can ask them, so what would you like me to do? How would you like me to remedy the situation? What can I do from now, perhaps to make sure this doesn't happen again? After that, let's take a look at asking about the consequences of your behavior. When we talk about the consequences of your behavior, we're talking about a negative impact that your behavior has had. It might have occurred or happened to the person who's criticizing you. In other words, your behavior might have had a negative impact on the person who's criticizing you, or it may have been on a third party, such as perhaps a customer at a place of employment, or it might have been on multiple people, on more than just one or two people. So you can ask about the consequences of your behavior. How has my behavior had a negative impact on things here for you or for the customer or whatever? You can also ask what else is wrong. The person criticizing you is certainly upset about something that they're telling you right now. I'm upset with this behavior that you just did or didn't do. But they might also potentially be upset about something from the past, or they might have something else in their mind that they're still irritated about or frustrated or angry about. And when you to find out if that's the case, you can ask what else is wrong. Is there anything else wrong? Is there anything else you want to tell me? Okay, and then the next category here, is called agreeing with the critic. So we looked at seeking more information. There are 6 options there. Agreeing with the critic. In this section, we have 2 options to choose from. When you agree with the critic, this allows you to acknowledge, accept the other person's point of view while still holding on to your own point of view. Okay, the first choice here under agreeing with the critic is called agreeing with the facts or agreeing with the truth. When you agree with the facts or you agree with the truth, you're agreeing with something that is, well, it's a fact, or it's basically a matter of fact. So in the instance below it says, you're right, I didn't call before stopping by. If I were driving through town and I was in my best friend's neighborhood and I just wanted to stop by and say hi, knocked on his door, and he says, man, I'm in the middle of something, you should have called first. And you could respond by saying, you're right, I didn't call before stopping by. It's a fact that you didn't call. You just kind of came to his house or her house and knocked on the door. The next one is called agreeing with the critic's perception. In my opinion, agreeing with the critic's perception is more like acknowledging the critic's perception. So if you don't agree with what the critic is saying, you can usually still accept what they're saying or acknowledge what they're saying without letting go of your own perception or your own perspective. So if somebody criticized your driving, you can say, I can see how you might find my driving as poor, or I can see where you might find my driving as being distracted, or you could see that you could consider me as being distracted while I was driving. That's the gist of agreeing with the critic's perception. Okay, let's take a closer look at the written portion of this assessment. This assessment, as the other ones that we've done in class, has 3 steps. Although the format for this assessment is a little different than the other ones we've done so far. Step 1 remains the same. Step 1, describe the situation in sufficient detail. You and another person are involved in a communication encounter, and the other person criticizes you. Describe what's going on in step 1. In step 2, here's where the format's a little different than what we've done in the past. You will put that other person's criticism of your behavior in quotations. First label, of course, the other person's name on the left side of the paper, and then put their specific criticism to you in first person in quotation marks. And only put one criticism there for step 2. In step 3, you will demonstrate the 8 different types of non-defensive responses that are covered in the chapter, and you will use one specific example for each of them in response to the single criticism that you indicated in step 2. So in step 2, if the other person criticizes you about one specific behavior, then you will include 8 non-defensive responses to that specific behavior. This scenario A is not a back and forth conversation with you and the critic. It's just you demonstrating that you understand the 8 different types of non-defensive responses to the criticism that you typed in step 2. Okay, so the first 2 here again are ask about specifics. So let's say in step 2 the other person criticizes you about your driving. Under number 3, and then label 1, type the words ask for specifics. You would respond by asking about the specifics of your driving in that particular example. Beneath that, type number 2, type guess about specifics, then provide an example guessing about specifics to the criticism that was typed above in step 2. Alright, then we come down to paraphrasing the speaker's ideas. Once again, type out number 3, type out paraphrase the speaker's ideas, then type out your response to the criticism from step 2. Do the same with asking what the critic wants, asking about the consequences of your behavior, and for the remaining ones as well. Let's go on to the next slide and we'll take a quick look at them. So here you would type out number 6, ask what else is wrong, and then you would type out a response, 1 or 2 sentences in which you ask what else is wrong in relation to the criticism above in step 2 once again. And then do the same for agreeing with the truth, agreeing with the facts, and for agreeing with the critic's perception. And for scenario A, or the first scenario that we're just talking about here, it can be either personal or professional. So if you did personal for scenario A, then scenario B has to be professional, or vice versa. So let's take a closer look at the format for the second scenario, or the next scenario. Okay, here for scenario B, if you did a personal scenario for A, you'll do a professional for B, or vice versa. This format is different than what we saw previously in scenario A. So for this scenario, step 1 remains the same. However, describe the situation in sufficient detail. You and another person are in a communication event, communication encounter, and that person criticizes you for something that you did or didn't do. They criticize your behavior. In step 2, the format is going to be a little different here. Here is where you will indicate which 3 non-defensive responses you chose for this scenario and why you consider each of those 3 to be the best types of non-defensive responses for this communication event. So you could say, I chose asking what the critic wants because, I chose paraphrasing because, and I chose then state the third one and why. Then you come down to step 3, and then you actually have a dialogue or a communication exchange between you and the critic. So let's take a look at the next slide at one possible format for this dialogue or this encounter. There's more than one way that it can be done. We'll just take a look at one possibility here. Okay, on this slide we see one format that you could use. There are other options I'll explain just briefly, but here label the other person's name and then put their criticism in quotation marks, as you see at the top of the slide. So the other person criticizes you, then you speak, giving a non-defensive response, and then in parentheses label the type of non-defensive response that you used. So if your first non-defensive response was asking what the critic wants, you would label asking what the critic wants in parentheses. Then after that, the person criticizes you again. You respond non-defensively with your second non-defensive response. The person criticizes you a third time about the same thing, and then after that you give your third non-defensive response, labeling what type of response it is in parentheses, and then potentially the other person speaks one more time, especially if you asked a question as your third type of non-defensive response, such as asking what the critic wants. This is just one possible format. Another possibility is where the person criticizes you, and you might use one or more. You might use more than one non-defensive response. So the person criticizes you about your behavior, and perhaps you might acknowledge the critic's perspective, or agree with the critic's perception, and then immediately after that you might use another non-defensive response before the other person speaks again. So the formatting for this one is a little bit flexible, as long as you demonstrate in a realistic type of communication encounter 3 non-defensive responses. You should be fine. And this scenario B that we're looking at now is the one that you will use to demonstrate in class. Okay, as always, please refer to the instructions in the instruction packet for more details about how the demonstration of this assessment will be conducted. So take a look at the written instructions. If you have any questions, please ask your instructor. Good luck, and we'll see you in class.